Hello everyone, this is Blatant. I'm filling in for Feeder Noob, who couldn't be here today to cast this particular match, which is No Tidehunter versus EG. Both of these teams at the top of their group in the defense, and so this is a tiebreaker. We'll see who gets to leave the group stage of the defense on top. For No Tidehunter, we already have an early ban of Nyx Assassin. Not too uncommon. Nyx is a very popular hero in the pro scene these days, mainly because of his very reliable stun and his ability to take down some of the more annoying casters, like Enigma or Darkseer. Basically int heroes because of the mana burn. Ban on EG's part, Keeper of the Light. Nothing too unusual here. Maybe a little bit of a pushback against some of the pushing heavy strategies that we've been seeing dominate the tri-lane here. A Wisp ban on No Tidehunter, again, pretty normal stuff. Wisp is a very powerful hero, if only for the ability to teleport your carry where he needs to be, when he needs to be. We've been seeing him a lot, especially paired with Lifestealer. He's been pretty fearsome in the early stages of the defense here. Another ban for EG, a Batrider ban. Again, pretty uncontroversial ban. Batrider's seen a lot of recent popularity, if only because folks are learning just how powerful his initiation can be, as well as noting that his ability to disable movement and disable turn speed meaning literally the speed at which your hero can turn, with his napalm is incredibly powerful. Professional teams tend to play a much more positional game, and nothing helps setting up a positional gank like making sure that your enemy can't move or can't turn around. Still waiting here to see what No Tidehunter's going to pick for their first pick. They still have a minute to chew this out, and these first early picks can sometimes set the momentum because they induce counter picks or let the other team see what kind of strategy you're going to try to be running, so we'll see. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to catch many of No Tidehunter or EG's games in this tournament, so I don't really know what strategies they're preferring. And No Tidehunter with the early Lone Druid pick. Lone Druid's very tanky and very useful, especially the bear's ability to entangle is really useful in making sure that when you try to execute a gank, whoever you're ganking can't really get away. Sorry about that. I'm a little unused to doing this stage of the casting, and I had the broadcaster a little bit up for a little while. Sorry about that. We are going to be watching from our perspective. Notice that there are a few casters here: Dota 2's Marty, Toby Wan, now Sven, B-Hat. So you'll probably, if you want to get a very different and more educated perspective, you can watch Toby Wan's cast. But you know, casters have to start from somewhere. Anyway, EG out with their picks. Leshrac, someone we haven't seen, I think, enough of in the Defense 3. He's an incredibly strong pusher and can deal some team fight damage. Very brutal team fight damage, not to mention that Diabolical Edict does a good job in those pushes of actually damaging towers. Lifestealer, very common pick that we've been seeing throughout the defense. He's basically been the carry of choice for several teams, including, if I recall right, Mouse Sports, Dignitas. A couple of other strong teams in the defense have been really playing a Lifestealer oriented strategy, and we haven't really seen him shut down too hard. So we're gonna I'll be curious to see what No Tidehunter is going to be running in terms of the carry. They may be trying to make Lone Druid the full farm carry, but we haven't seen that much of that strategy in the defense. Darkseer, a good pickup for No Tidehunter, very capable of running a solo lane and harassing enemy hero. He could be run solo lane against the Lifestealer, who will probably be trying to free farm. That wouldn't be a bad matchup. Lifestealer is the melee hero, is going to tank a lot of damage. Templar Assassin, a really popular hero in pub games. Haven't been seeing quite as much of her in the pro scene, perhaps because a lot of teams learn to adapt and pick things like Batrider, who's her natural counter, or other other folks like Gyrocopter, anybody who really can burst down that refraction shield will find a fairly fragile Templar assassin beneath it. Not to mention that her mobility is a little bit lessened until she manages to farm up the Blink Dagger. But still, a very potent mid hero, a very potent ganker, and not a bad pickup at all for no Tidehunter. Not to mention that I think it will force EG to do a little bit of thinking, since I don't think most of the teams they encounter are taking the Templar route these days. Third pick for EG, still pending, and a Magnus. Very, very normal pick. Very irritating hero to play against, if only because so many of his abilities are positional, and a good player between Skewer and Reverse Polarity can pile up your entire team to take as much AoE or just straight cleave damage as possible. Back to bans. I'm kind of curious to see what no Tidehunter will be banning. Wisp and Nyx were very conventional bans. They didn't really have much to do with the status of the current game against EG. They could have really been bans at any point in the game or against any team. They were just kind of standard, oh, we don't like these things to be in the enemy's hands bans. Chen, a little bit more of a normal ban. I'm thinking that so far EG doesn't really look like they have a jungler who will be farming most effectively down there. They don't have anyone like say a Doombringer or a Nature's Prophet or anything like that. And Chen is very powerful, so it's a 2-for-1 ban for Tidehunter. They're making it a little more difficult for EG to effectively collect their farm, as well as cutting down a hero with some irritating abilities. Shadow Demon ban on EG. That's not unexpected here. Shadow Demon is possibly the strongest anti-carry support hero that exists in Dota 2, if only because his Purge combined with Disruption does such an effective job of shutting down an enemy carry, or at least making his life very difficult, that the stronger you think your carry is going to be relative to their other team, the more you're afraid of Shadow Demon. So also he's very popular on the pro scene, and a lot of players are very, very good with him, so it's a pretty good ban. Fourth ban we're seeing from no Tidehunter, Brewmaster. Makes a little bit of sense. Brewmaster is not as item dependent early as, for example, Lifestealer, who's fairly dependent on farm is. So he would have been a good pickup for EG, because that would have added a lot of early team fight, allowed them to push a little bit earlier and have a bit of stronger team fight, even necessarily without having to have Brewmaster get a particularly good farm. So let's see what else is going on here. A Jakiro ban from EG. Pretty good ban on their part. Again, one of those strong team fight heroes. Also would give no Tidehunter a little bit of positioning ability, which none of their heroes really, except Darkseer with the Wall Replica and Vacuum, but a lot of their heroes don't have much in the way of stun or much in the way of positioning, and looks like EG is perfectly happy to keep it that way. No Tidehunter with the Undying ban, and rounding out a very conventional list of bans for no Tidehunter. It doesn't seem like they really are afraid of anything in particular from EG, but they're just getting rid of some of the most commonly well-played heroes on the pro scene, and some that might be just generally irritating. EG's bans, on the other hand, seem like they have more of a purpose to protect themselves from early pushes. This is the Kodal and Jakiro kind of bans, and protect their enemy carry from the most irritating forms of positional harassment, so Jakiro's Ice Path, Batrider's Lasso, etc. Only a couple seconds left on a pick here. And the last ban is Enigma. Again, banning heroes that have strong positional abilities and abilities to disrupt the way that their carry is attacking. Gyrocopter is the pick for no Tidehunter. Now, Gyrocopter is actually an actual counter to Templar Assassin, so if you weren't going to ban her against Templar, it might make sense to pick her up. Also a very strong team fight here with the Flak Cannon doing a great job. And of course, if you have very good coordination and he manages to farm up an Aghanim Scepter, you could even do a global call down, which means that Gyro can farm and still bring his ultimate to bear. In either case, his ultimate's still very good. Queen of Pain, a very likely Well, I don't actually know where EG is going to lane Queen of Pain. Normally she's a very strong mid lane because you really want her to get that AoE ulti, the scream, as quickly as possible. But she also isn't going to be as farm dependent, at least in the early game, since basically between her scream, her dagger, and her AoE, she'll do all the nuking damage that you can reasonably expect of her, and she's not really durable enough to stay in there and continue fighting. So the farm is going to be a bit wasted on her in the mid, so perhaps she'll be part of a very harassy-oriented tri-lane. Sven is the last pickup for no Tidehunter. Nothing really to say about a Sven. If you haven't seen a Sven carrying in a pro game, then I suggest you need to watch a pro game or two, and this may not perhaps be a bad experience for you if this is your first one, but Sven has so many advantages as a strong late game carry. He has God's Strength, of course, which is basically a built-in triple damage rune when it's activated at its height. He has a built-in very powerful cleave. He has a very good targeted but slightly AoE stun, and of course his Warcry, which is not all that great but does let him charge in and make that distance. And then the typical builds for Sven, doing things like a Mask of Madness or other things to increase his attack speed so that he can cleave his way to victory. And Axe, and a little bit of an unconventional but a really neat pick by EG. I was mentioning earlier that no Tidehunter has Lone Druid, who's a natural to kind of get the farm that's not going to be taken in the easy lane or the mid lane, and that EG didn't really have somebody to do that on their side, and all of a sudden they do. Axe, who basically from level 1 can jungle as well as anybody else, is perhaps the most effective jungler in terms of not needing any items and can just kind of go out there and do it, or can, you know, pick up 1 or 2 items to make the job slightly easier. Axe also very effective in harassing enemy heroes early in the game. He's perhaps the most effective harasser in levels, say, 2 through 5. Not a straight-out nuker like Queen of Pain, but somebody who can make laning a very nightmarish experience. Looking at the lineup that folks have already picked out, looks like Bediz on EG is going to be playing Leshrac. Sorry, I'm going to pull this up for a moment. Jo going to be taking the role of Lifestealer, no surprise there. Demon and Magnus. Melk as Axe, and Fear as Queen of Pain, which is just kind of an appropriate pairing of a name to a hero here. And looking at the other side here, as no Tidehunters, S4 picking up Templar Assassin, who's headed kind of to the mid, looks like. Following around here, Follow Ack as a Gyrocopter, Admiral Bulldog as the Lone Druid, Eternal Envy as Sven, and Darkseer, Live and Let Lolda, gonna take the bottom lane, probably solo laning. So it looks like what we're seeing here is a tri-lane at the top, though currently, in fact, Tidehunters is sending 4 heroes up there in case the initial skirmish is there. They're also perhaps going to try to snipe the top rune, and Darkseer's going to try to get the first rune himself. Notice that he already has Ion Shell, so he can protect himself from early harassment. If he's the one who gets jumped, he can just take this little path here and just go back to the tower. Meanwhile, Tidehunters, no Tidehunters, is looking around, and the rune's at bottom. It's an invisibility rune. I'm sure they're talking about whether Darkseer should just grab it or leave it, or, you know, perhaps deny it. He takes it, and he's off. He must know that there was a good chance that somebody saw him pick up that invis rune and take it, but oh, Leshrac just moves right past him. Wards doesn't seem to really care too much that Darkseer's there. And now we're seeing how these early lanes are going to shape up. It looks like Lifestealer's here. Leshrac kind of being a bit of a bodyguard here. He's not really going to take any of the farm from Lifestealer, of course. That would be pretty much a capital sin. But he is going to perhaps do a little bit of stacking, make the jungle a little bit more fruitful, and make sure that Lifestealer doesn't get ganked early. Especially someone like that Darkseer who's holding on could be very irritating. Notice here that Darkseer is using Ion Shell to farm and pull the lane, the creep lane. He's basically farming their jungle, trying to prevent Axe from doing the same with the easy camp here. And notice that that's oh, we're gonna have a little interesting meetup here. Leshrac sees it. The stun goes down. Are they gonna get Darkseer? Darkseer's hard to get. He's got the surge. Is the surge gonna be enough? He's gonna run. Axe is gonna hit him, and no, I don't think it's gonna be enough. Leshrac hits the second stun, and boom! First blood on Darkseer. Good stuns on the part of Leshrac, showing again how useful just the stun can be on a well-placed hero. Picks up a second level of Edict. Axe has been healing himself up a little bit. And we're back to business. Oh, another jumping here at Magnus. Looks like Tidehunter is going to try to attack Magnus, get a little bit of a revenge gank, but it didn't quite work. They harassed him pretty effectively, but nothing doing. So top lane here, Lone Druid is in fact taking the safe lane here and farming up. So that means that Sven and Gyro are basically, they're going to be playing something more of like a support Sven, which is actually fairly normal. Treating Sven as the hard farm carry is a bit of a recent innovation, but Sven is still very playable as a support team fight hero, and he will be getting some farm. Notice that he just pulled the lane here to take the hard camp. A bit of a pause. Looks like Demon needs a few minutes. That's -5. Join Dota points. Internet problem says the team was late. Okay. A little bit of good humored ribbing about losing the join Dota points. Both teams, of course, not really terribly concerned about it being at the top of green. So while we're at a lull here, take a look at that's not what I meant to pull up. What I meant to pull up is last hits and denies, everybody's favorite. So not too surprisingly, looks like Lifestealer is in the lead here with 16 and 9, followed by Lone Druid at 15 and 4. So that's pretty equal, 16 last hits versus 15 last hits. But it looks like Lone Druid is not doing quite as good a job keeping his lane in equilibrium. Lifestealers tend to get a lot of experience doing that in the pro scene, since they tend to get free farm more or less uninterrupted, so it's a much bigger deal for them to control their own creep wave and make sure it doesn't push the enemy tower before they're ready for it to. But notice that Lifestealer's doing a pretty good job of that here. And actually Lone Druid's not doing a bad job of it either, considering that his lane was just pulled. Next in farm, we're going to see Queen of Pain versus Templar Assassin. Queen of Pain, a little bit of the edge, 11 and 1 versus Templar's 8 and 3. Still pretty respectable distances though. Darkseer pulled up a few creep hits, so he's 8 and 0 right now. Of course, taking Ion Shell to basically farm some hard camps that most other heroes can't. So Sven, for instance, would not be able to farm the hard camp by himself without pulling creeps. But Ion Shell just does so much damage to units around him. I mean, if you look at it, right, even at level 1, 30 damage over time for 20 seconds is enough to take down most of a hard camp. And, a couple of right clicks does the rest. Not to mention if there are two different sources of Ion Shell damage doing the work. So, yeah, Ion Shell's another creep, and Ion Shell himself if it's a really hard camp. But he probably doesn't have to. Magnus is reconnected, and we're going to see the ready on both sides, and a go. We're back into the game. Let's take a little bit of a look at what seems to be the least equal lane in terms of last hitting. We're going to try to see why Templar Assassin's having what seems to be a little bit of trouble last hitting, at least compared to Queen of Pain. She's down at least 3 for it, which is a little bit of unusual. Queen of Pain shouldn't have too much ability to harass Templar. In fact, it should be quite the opposite. Templar should be doing a pretty good job of harassing Queen of Pain. Oh, but she's having a rough time of it. Axe comes up from EG to throw in a little intimidation, and there goes a hit on Queen of Pain. Pretty normal, trading blows, pretty bloodedly, but not too surprisingly. Now, this is a bit of a notice. By the way, this is a nice point here. There's a sentry ward in the mid. That's of course so that if they try to perform a gank on Templar and she melds, she's not going to be able to just sit there and get help from her teammates. They'll be able to finish her off. Notice that the last hits has gone basically to equal now. 28 on Lone Druid, 27 on Lifestealer, 17 on Queen of Pain, 16 on Templar, 17 on Templar. So, you know, the lane's pretty much evening up. Queen of Pain has a double damage. Very nice. I'll be curious to see whether EG tries to arrange a hit on Templar Assassin. She's one of the more difficult heroes to arrange a gank on because Refraction gives her several hits worth of escape. And Lone Druid and Gyro taking that early top tower. I don't know what happened there, but EG didn't seem to really care or have much of a response. This is a lot of early gold into the bank for Lifestealer. Sorry, a lot of early gold into the bank for Lone Druid, which can be dangerous. Lone Druid, in a sense, given infinite farm, Lone Druid is about the scariest hero there is because he has the bear and himself, so that's kind of like two heroes who could theoretically achieve maximum farm, but of course, you know, in any actual reasonable game, he's not going to literally max himself out in the bear, but he can still be pretty scary. Not to mention, a good Lone Druid can micro the bear, have the bear take a ton of damage, jump in himself, then take a ton of damage, and by the time you think you're finally through killing Lone Druid, he can resummon the bear, and you basically had to cut through 3 very tanky heroes to get one single kill, and that's a bad scenario no matter how you slice it. Giving the bear Hand of Midas, a little bit peculiar to have the bear be doing it instead of him, but perhaps leaves him to hold more regen and stats items, so actually I guess it makes sense. Moving back, curious to see whether Lifestealer is going to try to push this tower now. Right on cue, I was about to say. Looks like Lifestealer might try to push the lane back in retribution for the tier 1 tower that Lone Druid had such an easy time with on EG's side. And this would make a little bit of sense for them both to try to trade tier 1 towers in a bit uncontested, but Darkseer instead is going to come down to lane and start harassing Lifestealer. Of course, Lifestealer's not really afraid of Darkseer per se, but notice that he's taking damage every time he has to take his last hits. He's not going to let it take away a last hit or a deny, but he's having to tank more damage than he would really like. He infests that creep, bursts through, and gets a little bit of healing. By the way, for those of you who aren't pro Lifestealers, note that the infest really does give you a very strong heal depending on which creep and how healthy it is. So you'll notice that good Lifestealers are very aggressive about keeping that very, very cheap 50 in the mana pool, popping into creep, and immediately popping back out for a free heal. Not to mention a free last hit, but if you're playing Lifestealer, hopefully that last hit is not altogether that important. 50 to 26, 45 to 10. The difference in denies on Jayo's part is fairly astonishing. He's doing a great job keeping his stuff in equilibrium and not letting it slow down his farm at all. This is just an impressive last hitting and denying performance. 52 and 27. Jayo has almost as many denies as many of the folks in the game have last hits, which just tells you something. Lone Druid coming back, a little bit of farming, still pretty normal stuff. The mid also seems pretty, I'd say almost peaceful, quiet. Queen of Pain bottled a haste rune, another really useful rune in terms of setting up a gank. On Queen of Pain, that's particularly painful because, I'm sorry, that was a terrible pun, unintended. A haste rune is particularly useful for Queen of Pain because it allows her to basically blink in, do her damage, start running away, and then blink away. It adds a lot of extra mobility to a hero who's already very irritatingly mobile, so there's that haste rune activated. Looks like they're gonna pop an observer ward here. This is almost a preventative measure. They're trying to first see this ward right here, which I think, given the radius on this guy, they probably can in fact see that that's there. I can check that. Radiant. Yep, I think so. Looks like it to me. But also, again, Sentry wards are always going to be useful for Radiant side because Templar can always manage to hide in a meld. Last hit seems to have turned around a little bit. Lifestealer taking the lead on a Lone Druid. He seems to be about 8 up. I know this seems remarkably tedious in terms of, oh, who's up 3 or 4 last hits. Second hand of Midas. So, Tidehunter playing a bit of a dangerous game here. Let me explain what I mean by that. Hand of Midas is a commitment. You're getting 190 gold every 90 seconds. But those items aren't really worth a ton. I mean, else. They give you attack speed, which is good on the bear. Actually, it's going to stack into 60 attack speed, which, you know, is pretty a pretty potent thing. Oh, it looks like I just missed Queen of Pain getting Sven. Where did that happen? Let me see. Oh, it looks like Sven came up here and was noticed by the ward, and Queen of Pain probably jumped and tried to nuke him. Anyway, back to the point I was making. Tidehunters is really kind of gambling on there being either enough uninterrupted farm or that the game goes long enough that those 2 hands of Midases are going to pay for themselves. For $1,400 for 2 of them, if you think about it that way, that's 2,800 gold. That's the price of an armlet or a maelstrom. You know, it could be a demon edge. 2,800 gold's a lot of money. Now, of course, if given uninterrupted farm, at some point that means that he is going to outfarm Lifestealer, but hard. Lifestealer only has 1 hand of Midas, and Lone Druid has 2 hands of Midas. The problem is, however, that he's not going to be as useful in a team fight as Lifestealer, because Lifestealer's already going to start buying up into some more expensive luxury items of the useful variety, to put it that way. J.O.'s going to push the tier 1 tower. Sven's looking like he's thinking about stunning and running in there, but he also knows that Lifestealer's pretty farmed and significantly higher levels, so he can't really do anything. He can be a threat because Lifestealer doesn't know if anybody's behind Sven waiting to back him up on that stun, so instead Lifestealer says, I'm just going to go jungle. Good enough here. And again, if EG pushes down this tier 1 tower without too much resistance, you can almost think of it as even dealing, since EG didn't really bother to defend their tier 1 tower and Lone Druid's safe spot. And this is a compromise we see a lot in pro games in terms of seeding the safe lanes more or less at will. Oh, there's a little bit of a mix-up here. Queen of Pain was being chased there. Attempted gank on the part of no Tidehunters, but she managed to get away pretty easily. Queen of Pain's have an annoying tendency of doing that. Looking at last hits again, notice that Templar seems to have built up a little bit of a lead on Queen of Pain. That can be pretty frightening for a Queen of Pain, since Templar really is more of a late game fighter than she is, and with the correct items, namely, you know, a blink dagger and some crit, Templar is going to end up being much scarier than Queen of Pain. Magnus looking for the top rune, grabs illusions. Pretty strong on Magnus. Magnus is a bit of a tank, so you know he enjoys picking up the illusions, and he's gonna maybe he was thinking about going to the jungle, but looks like instead he's thought better of trying to harass Templar and is back. Meanwhile, Lifestealer has smoked that tier 1 tower. We knew this was pretty inevitable unless Tidehunters no Tidehunters wanted to put up quite a defense. They weren't really going to be able to prevent Lifestealer from taking it at his leisure. And indeed he did. A little bit of a mix-up at the mid. The Magnus illusions attacking the tower. It looks like really they may have been buying time to do that. Gyrocopter's homing missile gonna hit down Queen of Pain, but there's not really a follow-up. Leshy's here in case there's help needed. Queen of Pain's back. Gonna just do a little bit more last hitting. Now they're being a bit more aggressive about trading blows. They both have a bit more abilities to do so. Templar has to be careful about that scream catching her when she doesn't have a refract up, and likewise Queen of Pain has to be careful about taking a refract meld hit, which would basically nuke most of her life in a single hit, so she's feeling twitchy with her fingers on the button. Leshy and Sven. Leshy lets go of the Diabolical Edict, and he catches Sven in the jungle, and he's going to trap him in, but Gyrocopter from behind, catching Leshy. Sven's going to try to pour it out, but Queen of Pain's got it, and finishes off Gyrocopter, and a good engagement for EG. Trading Leshrac for Gyro and Sven, I would take that trade any day of the week. It looks like they might catch Templar Assassin as well. Lifestealer open wounds her. She's trying to get away. The refract is up there. She's taken several hits from Lifestealer. There's the blink from Queen of Pain, and it's over for Templar. Great couple of minutes of play from EG. A little bit aggressive on no Tidehunters. Checking out the secret shop or even being in this part of the jungle is a very, very dicey business for Sven alone, and he basically dragged Gyro in there to help him, and that was a bad decision on their parts. Sven maybe should have just taken the kill by the time that happened. EG's going to take that time with a man down to push that tower. That tower goes down quickly. Magnus with the last hit on it. Skype died again. Well, not really pertinent here. Back to the farming situation. It looks like Lone Druid and Lifestealer again at parity for last hits and denies. But let's look at the gold. Current gold. Notice that Lone Druid's holding on to about 800 more gold than Lifestealer. It's only been a couple of minutes since the two Hands of Midases are up, but since they have practically identical net worths, practically identical last hits and denies, the fact that Lone Druid is banking that much more gold, notice that that's again visible here in net worth, is almost entirely due to the Hands of Midas. The Hands of Midas are a big gold advantage. They may even be enough to compensate for the fact that Tidehunters is down several hero kills. There was an attempt at Roche. Sorry, guys, I missed whether that happened with smoke or not, but in any case, it doesn't look like EG notices that Roche is being taken. Templar really useful for helping tank damage from Roche, of course, because she's got the refract shell up, and of course is going to deal extra damage, that refract shell, all 6 instances of it. EG not knowing where Tidehunters is and why they're not responding to the tower hit, but oh, they must know now. Templar Assassin picks up the Aegis. EG takes a moment to reconsider and says, okay, we know they're going to come here with town ports, but we may as well make a push of this. Perhaps deciding either to push for the win, not the real win here, but, you know, to continue pushing if they get jumped. Here's the jump, call down on Gyrocopter. Templar's here, but EG has had time to take the tier 2 tower. They're chasing Templar. Oh, and that was a beautiful vacuum on Darkseer's part. Replicas created. Queen and Templar duking it out. Queen gets off for ulti, but Templar's refract is up, saving her. She's running around. Magnus finishes off Sven here, and so really just another straight win for EG. EG's looking very good here, folks. The only thing that's really paying off, I think, for Tidehunters is this 2 Midas strategy on Lone Druid's part. Lone Druid still managing to be higher net worth than Lifestealer. Oh, by the way, that just dipped probably because there's something on the courier that's combining for Lifestealer. Yep, there we go, the Maelstrom. So that's not counting towards his current net worth. They're actually pretty equal, I think. The Maelstrom is, what, like $2 grand and a little bit, so you're going to see, there we go, net worth. Oh, Lifestealer jumps up in the net worth for the moment. I'd be surprised if that sticks around. Yeah, there we go. I'm guessing the cooldown's just finished for Lone Druid. Speaking of, let me see if I was right about that. Oh, he's about to have a Hand of Midas use again. Notice he split them up between himself and the bear, and he's going for the bear Radiance, I think. Sacred Relic, or early Sacred Relic usually means that you're building a Radiance on the bear. That means that when your bear is hunting down people, chasing them, entangling them, etc., it's also dealing, you know, AoE damage from Radiance, and that's all great. Wait a second. Oh, okay. For a moment there, I saw the 2 hands return to the bear, and I thought, wow, is Lone Druid really going 3 Hands of Midas? That would be crazy. 2 Hands of Midas is unusual enough, but 3 Hands of Midas might earn the designation of crazy. Going back a little bit, let's take a look at the bottom. Jo is, I think, doing a little bit of scouting here. He's gonna try to steal their ancients from them, which is a good move. He knows that Darkseer really doesn't want to mess with him, and it'll take them a little while to organize a gank if they even guess that that's what he's doing. And they might have. There's Lone Druid. And yes, they are going to gank him. Here's some attack. He tries to pour it out. Where's the stun from Sven? Where's the stun from Sven? That stun would have prevented the town port from going out. Folks, I don't really know why that stun didn't happen. They must have seen that he was porting. The stun would have prevented him from porting, and they would have gotten an easy kill on Lifestealer. For the life of me, I can't figure out why the stun didn't go down. That's a little bit of a disappointing play from Tidehunters, and I think they're going to regret it. Magnus pops in and then skewers his way back out. Queen of Pain with a good scream, catching a kill. Lifestealer here trying to take back Templar, but that refract comes back up. He finishes her off. Good wall from Darkseer, really forcing them to hurt when they turn around and retreat. There's a trap going off from Templar. The Ion Shelled Bear chasing down Axe. I think he's going to kill Axe. There's nothing really he can do. Leshy with a stun, but it's too late. Axe is already down. Tidehunters is going to push this. They know that this is getting while the getting's good. Lifestealer almost dead. Lifestealer's dead now. Lone Druid's in the fighting. More of a push. This is just Magnus and Leshrac. Queen of Pain. Oh, takes a hard hit from Templar there. Looks like a full meld refract hit. Queen of Pain's going to have to pull back. Her usefulness is more or less done at this point. Leshrac's hiding in the woods, hoping to pop a stun on them if they finish pushing this. They're a little worried about somebody coming up from the lane. They drop a ward. But Tidehunters is pulling back. They don't really want to push this tier 1 tower. A bit of a mistake. They know that Lifestealer's not there. I think they had the team fight to do it, but oh, Lone Druid's out. That kind of explains it. Lifestealer's out, Lone Druid's out. Neither team really wants to do a big fight near the tower without one of their carries. A Haste Rune, I think, is going to be picked up by Templar, making her very, very dangerous to somebody farming alone, like, say, Axe here. But they're going to debate how to use that Haste Rune most effectively. Lone Druid back in. Notice that he's still ahead in the farm count. Notice that even though Queen of Pain has 5 kills and Lifestealer has 6 assists and uninterrupted farm, and Lone Druid only has a couple of kills to his name, that Hand of Midas double is giving him a fair bit of farm. Lone Druid still waiting on his Spirit Bear cooldown. I was looking around for the Spirit Bear, wondering where it is, and this is a bit of a problem with having the Hands of Midas on the bear. If the bear is down, then he doesn't have his Hands of Midas. Heading towards the tier 2 tower, EG is pushing this. They wanna have Tidehunters up against a wall, as it were, without tier 2s. The top lane pretty much demolished already from that earlier fight. I think EG's being a little bit greedy and trying to push the issue now. They know Tidehunter's not going to cede another tier 2 tower without a fight, and frankly, at one of these siege fights, I think EG might actually not have the advantage here, unless Magnus gets off a good skewer and reverse polarity and pulls them away from the tower, but it's going to be difficult to do if Magnus is not already in place. Notice that is precisely what our Magnus is trying to do here. He wants their team to go here so that he can either push them farther even that direction or push them in the opposite direction. Either way works. Basically, the surprise of the movement plus the reverse polarity is going to do a lot. And now Magnus is just blinking back to safety and returning to his farm lanes. Meanwhile, the entire time, Queen of Pain has been farming her butt off. She picks up an Orchid. That's a great... I think it's probably... Even though it's used, and particularly used by heroes like Clinks, I think with Heaven's Halberd, it's one of the most underrated items in the game. Basically, building in a silence with a very, very short cooldown, 18 seconds for a 5-second silence ability that's cheap. That's just an incredible bargain in my book. Not to mention the soul burn damage. 30% amplification of damage is an immense deal when you're dealing with an enemy carry. It takes someone like Lifestealer, it takes them from a hero who just can't be killed, who's constantly getting that little burst of healing from doing his lifesteal, to a very eminently killable hero. EG is choosing to fight without Queen of Pain or tangle without Queen of Pain so that Queen of Pain can push that middle tower, and with the Illusion Rune she's able to do so. This is just wonderful on the part of EG. Now Queen of Pain using her illusions to take down the refract, and scores a kill on Templar Assassin. one of the toughest things about playing Templar well is that Refract gives you a bit of a sense of invulnerability, but good players have ways of taking down those Refract shields before they pop you, and illusions are a great way of doing that. You expect to be able to hang around the creeps and not take hits that are going to burn down your refraction, but illusions aren't like that. Illusions can be forced to just suicide into you or throw a couple of hits your way, and all of a sudden, Templar had no refract shell. Queen of Pain hit her combos, and that's it for Templar. EG taking another tier 2 tower. This is really going to hurt Tidehunters, not only in terms of not having the coverage from any of their tier 2 towers, but also from the immense gold advantage that they have. If you look, the only tower that EG has lost this entire game is that top tier 1 tower that they ceded to Lone Druid without a fight. This is 4 towers worth of extra gold. 5 towers worth of extra gold that is currently lining EG's very, very rich pockets. Not a single one of those was denied either. Those were all just straight tower kills. So that's a big gold advantage in a pro game. Not to mention that EG already has the kills advantage. So if we look at games, sorry, we want to look at sorry, I'm not as used to pulling these up. Gold. I wanted to pull up one of those graphs of net gold difference, because I think that that graph will be pretty impressively in shoot, I don't know what these things. Oh, here we go. Difference in XP earned, difference in gold earned. Yeah, that's the graph I was looking for. Notice that the gold difference on the part of the Radiant, that's more than 10k difference. Of course, if you parcel out 5 extra towers, and that's a lot of gold right there, and then parcel out 9 extra kills, that's a lot of gold right there. And 10 extra grand to give to your team in a gold advantage, that's pretty humongous. You don't want to be doing that. And notice that the same is true of experience, but not quite as dramatically. That amount of experience can be made up by one very one-sided team fight, and given the positional heroes here, that's a possibility. Magnus a bit out of the fight. Lone Druid's there. Queen of Pain trying to blink out, Axe blinking out, Lifestealer with the kill for EG, so EG takes a kill and then kind of leaves. It's a good engagement. Lifestealer now trying to get Lone Druid. Lone Druid's so tanky, even Lifestealer's having a tough part, but Queen of Pain lands her ultimate, makes a ridiculous kill of it. Darkseer's wall, too late, slightly misplaced to get the kill, and that's a wipe. EG now has the field to do with whatever they want. They're going to check Roche. They're going to see Roche is there, and I think this time they're going to try to steal Roche. Lifestealer picking off another creep. And of course, even without Templar's trap there, Tidehunters has to know that this is what they're going to do, but 20 seconds on Templar and Darkseer and Lone Druid means that even if Sven and Gyrocopter wanted to do something about this Roshing, they just can't. EG is going to take Roche. Queen of Pain picks up the Aegis. A bit of an unusual choice, but she's pretty fragile, so maybe EG is thinking that Lifestealer's been tanky enough, he's going to survive these fights, but it might help to have a little bit more AoE sitting there in terms of the Scream and a little bit more chase in terms of the Blink, and that's not a terrible choice. Queen of Pain, her notice that her farming has been extremely good, as well as scoring several of the kills here at 7-0 and 4. And she's picked up 2 very strong disabling items, the Scythe of Vice, the Sheep Stick, and the Orchid Malevolence. So now she can silence and sheep between 2 different heroes, silencing one. So for instance, silencing Darkseer or silencing Gyrocopter, as well as adding a mana burn on that, and then sheeping another one. Queen of Pain's usefulness is she's picking up the items to make herself more useful in the late game. A mistake that some players make when having nukers like Lina or Queen of Pain or such is trying to build themselves out to be late game carries, and they really aren't late game carries. Their skills just don't scale that way. But if you have an immense amount of gold pooling around from these kills, the best way to do it is to get disablers. Disablers like Sheepstick, Orchid Malevolence, Heaven's Halberd if she was a different kind of support. For example, if she were an Omni Knight who had managed to pick up a ton of gold, a Heaven's Halberd means that he can disable the enemy carry. And these kinds of items ensure that you're going to be useful to your team no matter how far the game goes. A Sheepstick's always going to be useful to your team. Doesn't matter, you could be a level 10 Queen of Pain who's going to die in the first 2 seconds, but if you get that Sheepstick off on the enemy carry, you are going to be useful. Now Queen of Pain is invisible, she's doing a little bit of scouting. Notices most of Tidehunters headed that way, and she's going to try for a little bit of harass. Kind of showing Tidehunters that she sees that they're there, and she doesn't think that they're really going to turn around and try to kill her. Maybe they just can't believe that she's being so ballsy. But really pretty harmless. She still had a lot of escape, a Sheepstick, a silence, etc. Keeping an eye out on Axe here. A little nice perch for her to sit on. And Dark's here, who's been farming here for a little bit, is just going to take off. Now, notice that the net worth balance has fallen from Lone Druid having an advantage, a fairly distinct advantage, to Lifestealer and him pulling up about equal. Again, notice that the score is 17-3, and Lone Druid has not been scoring. I mean, he's capped out at 3 kills since they've only gotten 3 kills, but he's capped out at 2 of them. Meanwhile, Lifestealer with 1 kill and 10 assists, so this would be a huge gold difference, but the 2 Midas hands are basically keeping Lone Druid in the game in terms of farm. Notice that the Bear has a Radiance, this is not too unexpected, and a Basher, so Lone Druid's really going what can be affectionately called the Bear build, which is where you're relying on the Bear to both tank and do most of the DPS. Oh, Queen of Pain is here. Magnus is here. This is the fight. The Bear starts trying to focus down Magnus. A Queen of Pain ulti. A beautiful ulti by Queen of Pain. She gets focused down quickly, but this is what the Aegis is for. Templar gets killed. Buys back in. EG, Queen of Pain has been earning her keep with EG. Every fight, it seems like Queen of Pain has had a good screen, catching everybody with a ton of AoE. Queen blinks away. Are they going to chase her? I think they're going to try to. Templar drops a trap, hits her well-timed trap. Queen's still got a blink, though, and of course they know that, and Tidehunters is going to slink away. But they are going to try to push that middle tower, and they have it. Lifestealer and Magnus are down another full 30-40 seconds here. I think this is a bit of a mistake on the part of Tidehunters if they don't push this strong. They have their carry, Lone Druid. Lone Druid's making a ton of money. They can really use the money from a tier 2 tower. It doesn't really matter which tier 2 tower they take. So doing this half-hearted pushing is a bad idea. It gave Queen of Pain a chance to engage, but Queen of Pain's over-engaged, and they've got it. Lone Druid takes Queen. Lone Druid takes Leshrac. Axe is gonna fall. Oh, and this is bad. EG should have just let them do what they wanted to. Queen of Pain got a little too ballsy, and they weren't all that far away. They hadn't split up to farm yet, so maybe a better played move by Tidehunters than I was giving them credit for. They didn't want to push too obviously, but they wanted to push nevertheless. Now we see Tidehunters. Looks like they're gathering around at the mid. Maybe they'll try to push mid, or are they just roaming the jungle trying to catch somebody still farming, or are they going to take the farm themselves? It's still pretty tough to see. Gyro ports out. Lone Druid back where he's happiest, farming and making him soon to be a soon to be invincible bear. Not really, but pretty close to it. A little surprised actually that the bear doesn't have treads, or no, really, that the bear doesn't have treads. The reason I'm surprised about this is that now that he's finished Radiance and Skullbasher, it only takes a couple of Hand of Midas hits to start earning the money towards those power treads. Power treads are about the cheapest way you can add a ton of attack speed without changing inventory slots. So they're really a good investment. You don't always get them first, but a little bit of a peculiar decision not to get them at all on the bear so far. Hyperstone, of course, nothing to complain about a Hyperstone at all, but again, the power treads are just a free way to do it, and they added even more survivability and tankability to the bear, so I'm a little surprised he doesn't do it. Lifestealer back to farming. Notice, by the way, with those last engagements, that Lone Druid, in fact, jumped into the net worth lead by about 3 grand on Lifestealer. 3 grand is basically a major item's worth of net worth difference, so that's not insignificant. Of course, I'm checking Lifestealer now. He's got about 2,500 in the bank. He's got a Maelstrom and he's got a Abyssal, so I'm guessing probably a Mjolnir. Usually that's the if you've got about 2 grand and you've got the Maelstrom, you just buy a Hyperstone and upgrade that. He went Abyssal first, which makes a little bit of sense in this scenario. You want the bashes on Lone Druid, especially because Lone Druid is such a huge tank that he's harder to focus down quickly for Lifestealer than someone like a Luna or a Gyrocopter or another one of the Agi carries. Not to mention that the bear can also run interference on Lone Druid to make it difficult to finish off the kill. So he wants that Abyssal Blade. He wants to be able to stun somebody. Checking out Lone Druid again. 2 hands of Midas each at the 5 and 2 second cooldowns. Pop one, pop the other. 380 gold here in literally seconds. Lone Druid ports. Where did he port to? Ports back home. What's he picking up? The Assault Cuirass. And notice that the Assault Cuirass goes on the Lone Druid himself. A bit of a strategic decision. He's always going to be close enough to the bear that the bear will get the aura. But that extra bit of basically the extra bit of armor goes to Lone Druid himself, because after all, even if the bear is doing a smoke, I wonder who or what they're gonna smoke. They must, yeah. EG's also smoked, though. EG comes out of the smoke there. Both teams smoked. Both teams gonna excuse me. Both teams going to try to catch the other team unawares in their jungles, or perhaps do really a really fast tower push. In this case, maybe they're going to try to take the tower in spite of... no, they're going to go jungling. Both teams doing the exact same thing, using smoke and then going to the other team's jungle and taking it. Another smoking here. I think they really expect EG to be around here somewhere, and they're not, so... They're trying not to let show the fact that everyone's here. It looks like Darkseer and Templar are pushing the lane, and that's pretty normal, but they're trying not to show those enemy creeps the fact that it's not just those two, it's also Lone Druid and Gyro and Sven. They're basically being careful about managing their vision. Darkseer here with the two Templar Assassin illusions, they're making it look like this is a push that they're not really all that invested in, a passive push, and then 2 heroes from EG are going to come out and meet this passive push. They're thinking of farming it. Leshrax here and Axe here. But by this time, actually, Tidehunters has retreated back. Their top tower took a little bit of pushing, so they did in fact turn this into a passive push. It would have been interesting to see what happened if they had stayed around and tried to make a kill out of it. But the counter pushes happen, and notice that both teams basically had equivalent problems. EG was up here in No Tidehunter's top lane and was forced to come back down here to deal with this push, and then vice versa, Tidehunters was here in EG's bottom lane and was forced to come back and respond to the pushes here. So pretty stalemate. And notice that Lifestealer's net worth has apparently dropped down to 12 grand, but yeah, I don't believe that at all. That's a clear case of something on the courier, and that something is an Assault Cuirass, of course. That's, you know, an extra 5-ish grand more onto Lifestealer, so his actual net worth is about 18. There we go, 1849. But that does mean that, especially since Jo just picked up something off the courier and he's not holding on to a ton of cash, that's a pretty accurate measurement right now. And this is a pretty accurate measure for Lone Druid, who, by the way, picked up a Sage to give himself another form of bash besides his Bear Skull Basher. Also gives a bit of survivability to the Druid himself. He's starting to be... The Bear's got a fairly high DPS now and is fairly tanky and all, and he's starting to worry more about surviving the team fights himself, so you're going to see a little bit of a tilt towards building himself up at the expense of the Bear, which is fine. We see a Cloak here. He might pick up a Hood of Defiance. Carries you know, at this point they shouldn't be taking quite as much damage from Queen of Pain, and I think they've realized that that Queen of Pain scream has been really effective against them in team fights. So Lone Druid picking up the cloak to buff his own magic resistance will probably update it into a Hood of Defiance if he gets some spare money, and he's the Lone Druid with the infinite hands of Midas, so it's certain he's going to get some money. EG contesting this now. They saw it happen. They gathered up in time. They pick off the bear. Oh, this is painful for Lone Druid. An escape in which they lose Sven is one thing because he's playing support Sven, so it's not that big a deal. But a team fight in which they lose the bear and he has to wait for the cooldown on that, that's a lot more painful. And oh yes, 150. Oh, he must have had the cooldown ready, so the bear is back. But notice that if the bear gets killed off again, he's got to wait practically 2 more minutes for that bear, so something to think about. Not to mention it was about 100 free bucks or whoever it was that finished it off. I think that might have been Lifestealer. Looking at the net worth again, Jaya doesn't have anything on the courier, so this 19 grand is pretty accurate, and 24 grand is also accurate for Lone Druid. This advantage in gold is starting to pile up in Lone Druid's favor. 2 hands of Midases, as long as the team fights are going about equivalently, which, to be fair, they have been, because this game started about 12-3 and now has progressed about 20-8, which is slightly in EG's favor, but not hugely. And Tide's been able to pick up Roche, etc. Left unchecked and left infinitely long, that hands of Midas, the 2 hands of Midas are eventually just going to mean that Lone Druid is going to have more money than Lifestealer and have better items than Lifestealer, and that's going to be a problem. Notice that Lone Druid now has a Heaven's Halberd. Oh, a fan of my heart. I was saying earlier those disable items are really strong and a little bit underrated, and that Sage got built into a Heaven's Halberd, precisely the way I would play it. This is lovely. Because basically Lone Druid is now going to be able to do Heaven's Halberd and disarm Lifestealer for a full 4.5 seconds. It'll last 3 seconds actually, because it's a melee target. But a Lifestealer that has 3 seconds of not being able to attack, right click, especially when that same Lifestealer has a ton of attack speed from an Assault Cuirass, a Maelstrom, and at some point probably a Mjolnir. That's a lot of DPS to remove from a fight, and Lifestealer doesn't have anything except his right click. I mean, he's built himself up in Abyssal so that he has the activatable stun, but you don't want a level 22 Lifestealer in a fight for 3 seconds being able to do nothing but pull off a stun. That's just a very effective way to shut down Lifestealer. Going back to Queen of Pain for a little bit, notice that she's picked up power treads. You know, you don't really think of Queen of Pain is switched her power treads to strength. She's already had treads on int for a while, but she has 2 grand of a mana pool. Those int points aren't doing anything for her, but a point booster, switching those treads to strength, she maybe should have done that a while back, is going to improve her survivability for quite a while. Tidehunter's pushing the top lane. All of them except a couple of illusions of Templar Assassin, who's pulling the middle lane. Sorry I'm yawning a bit, guys. Didn't get a particularly good round of sleep, and not really used to solo casting a full-length game of this magnitude with so much going on. It's kind of pulling the breath out of me. And here comes Tidehunters. I think they're just gonna, straight out push on the tower. Now the question is EG gonna respond? Are they gonna counter push the own mid lane here and let them take that tier 2 uncontested? This could turn into a bit of a base race. It looks like EG is at Tidehunter's mid tower, and Tidehunters is at their top tower. And they've chosen better of it. They chose to come back and defend. EG comes back. They take the bear. Tidehunter's running. Magnus trying to skewer them in, but it doesn't work. They're continuing to counter push. Lone Druid resummons the bear. Homing missile hit. And this is a bit of a draw. Not as much of a draw as you would think, because Tidehunters had the initiative and managed to take that tier 2 tower, add a little bit of gold back to their pockets. And EG didn't really manage to do any damage before they basically had to come home and defend. So a bit of a loss there for EG. A good, clean, easy pickup of money for Tidehunters. So a good engagement for Tidehunters. Going back to net worth, 26 grand for Lone Druid, 21 grand for Lifestealer. They both have significant amounts of money in the bank. Kind of curious to see what Lifestealer's right next to the secret shop, but he's not picking up the Hyperstone, so maybe he isn't going to go Mjolnir after all. I'm not really sure what he is going to go with 3,500 gold in the bank. Meanwhile, Lone Druid, going back to check him out, he did buy something. I missed what that was, though, so it's probably on the bear. A Demon Edge on the bear. I think he's either going to go MKB or Chrysalis on the bear. Or Chrysalis to go for Daedalus on the bear. Don't really know. Both of them have their upsides. Bear's doing 210 damage a hit, so maybe a little bit of critting couldn't hurt there. Or he just may want to amp it and make sure that the bear never misses. Either way would work. Darkseer's by now finished up a Pipe of Insight, and he's carrying a gem. I didn't notice when this happened in particular, but a pretty useful pickup for dewarding. Meanwhile, looking at Sven really has played the classic support Sven, something that we just hadn't seen a lot of recently. He's been the ward bitch. He's actually managed to buy himself OMG power treads, but he has 2,500 gold. This is not the Sven of Dota 2 Cinema wins doing a 5-man rampage single cleave kill. Quite the opposite. Let's see. Bear's tearing through things with the Radiance. Nothing too unusual there. The double Hands of Midas is used again. Notice that Lone Druid is just starting to slowly accelerate away from Lifestealer in terms of the net worth. That gap is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and Lifestealer just can't jungle fast enough to make that difference. Even, 4,600 gold in the bank, 1,400 bank for Lone Druid. It's just one of those things where you start being unable to make up the differences. The tower differences is still has time to tilt back into Tidehunter's favor, or at least tilt back to equity. Even with the huge early gold lead that EG picked up from having all 6 of the towers down faster, this is only a temporary lead in the gold, and they didn't really capitalize on it, I think. Now Tidehunter's is going to be able to push down those towers without too much trouble. Here's the engagement. Axe in, coming in, the bear is tanking a ton of damage. The bear basically took the tower by itself. 100 gold for them, but that's it. And this is something that EG is going to be able to do. Tidehunters is going to be able to do to the mid tower too. They're going to force a team engagement, and that bear is going to sit there and smack the tower down until it dies. And EG is going to kill the bear. But so what? It's 100 gold, and they're trading 100 gold for a tier 2 tower. Not to mention money in their pockets, so it's always going to be a worthwhile trade. $100 for a tower, who wouldn't pay that price? Meanwhile, Lone Druid, the farmer who just kept getting fatter. It's almost like some kind of Shel Silverstein tale. And he's just going to continue to farm up. Notice that the net worth difference looks like 7 grand now. 7 grand. Queen of Pain. This is interesting. She's picked up an Eye of Scotty. Eye of Scotty, really neat item. Super, super luxury item. An item that you basically get if you have just got so much money that you don't know what to do with it. Not really that you don't know what to do with it, but that there's nothing more useful you can build in terms of your team. And Queen of Pain says, okay, I've got a scythe, so I'm doing hexing, I'm doing silencing. Really, at this point, I'm more useful if I stay alive so that I get a second round on the cooldown on these things. And how do you stay alive? One of the best ways for a fragile hero to stay alive is the Eye of Scotty. Plus 25 to all attributes. That's a lot of strength. That's a Reaver's worth of strength. Plus 250 health and 250 mana from the point booster, plus a little bit of a built-in buff. And suddenly, Queen of Pain looking at 2,400 hit points. That's Queen of Pain, folks. 2,400 hit points. For comparison, Lone Druid himself is only clocking in at 2,700 hit points. So Queen of Pain has almost as many hit points as Lone Druid. So this is a bit of the verging on Queen of Pain has gotten so much money over the course of the game relative to what Queen of Pain should have, that she's actually probably going to do a satanic build. She's got Lifesteal that combines with Scotty. and she might actually go pick up a Reaver and then have a Satanic and become a very weird right-click hero. Yeah, and notice she does 250 points of damage since both of her disable items are, int boosting items. So she has 160 intelligence. That's one smart Queen of Pain. Unfortunately, she does a lot of damage. Unfortunately for Tidehunters. Looking around still, haven't done this really enough. Templar Assassin with the Daedalus doing a ton of damage with Refract. She can almost solo Roche between rounds of Refract and Meld hits, but with the bears there to help her, that's no problem. The Monkey King bar is picked up on the bears, and then we have an engagement. Queen of Pain comes in, bursts both of her things, throws in a very nice scream, a double kill scream. Now that Eye of Skadi is becoming formidable with a move and attack slow. The attack slow built on Skadi is 20%. That is a huge thing to pop on someone like Templar Assassin, not to mention the 30% move slow. EG noticing that the gem is there. I don't know if they care a ton, but yeah, Demon says fine, I'll trade a bottle for a gem. Seems like a good trade for me. The bottle's probably diminishing utility. EG just swept the floor with that. I'm gonna have to say, not really sure how that happened. Just a poor engagement on the part of Tidehunters, but this is looking bad. This is about 40 seconds. I don't think Lone Druid has buyback money. Darkseer doesn't have buyback money. Templar, none of these folks have buyback money. So EG is gonna have an uncontested shot to take some racks, and boom, racks 1 and racks 2 all at the same time. They're going to swing over to mid. Are they going to have time to take the mid racks? Oh my, I think they do. Oh, what a painful way to transition from a very tight game into something that might be closer to GG. Now, another 12, 14 seconds, 10 seconds for Templar. Darkseer's back. Lone Druid is back, but EG has gotten to Mega Creeps, complete racks of the enemy team. Oh, this is just going to make Tidehunter's job painful. Tidehunters now basically can't afford to leave their base alone for too long without having pushed it back all the way, because the Mega Creeps will advance and kill them. They basically have to go straight through a racks and go straight for the kill. They don't even have the luxury, I think, of doing the 3 racks Mega Creeping, because I'm not sure that they can afford to be away from base that long unless the creep line is really pushed far down. No Tidehunters knows it, so we see the strong, aggressive counter push straight down the mid. Will EG realize that this is a defend or die kind of situation? Maybe. Tidehunters just putting Lone Druid's money where it's worth. Queen of Pain waiting here to try to get the good engagement, but Templar does the trap. Magnus with a reverse polarity, but it's not enough. There's a gyrocopter attack, and this is just a mess. Hard to see what's going on. Sven with a hit. Queen of Pain ulties. Gets a couple. This is so far just... Oh, the Darkseer wall. What a wicked placement. That's great placement from Tidehunters, but they're just getting swept up. Lifestealer is just too strong. Templar is down. And this is GG. EG has managed to pull it ahead. And notice that this is pulling it ahead even though Lone Druid has a ton of money more. And they're going to proceed. And of course, teams aren't going to take it too hard because they're this is a tie break. They're both advancing anyway. And various folks, of course, advertising for themselves. EG's going to see if they can take take the Ancient before the Abandons take it. And will there be a Fountain Dive? Is Jo going to give the fans a Fountain Dive just for an extra multi-kill? I think he's going to. Oh, and it's too late. A prize for witnessing glorious victory. Sometimes you see these little Fountain Dives are fun, but I think some of the pros also know that these spawn item gifts associated with the game, so it's just kind of a nice throwaway gesture. Get in a couple of extra kills. And there we go. There we have it, folks. EG pulls out the win. This has been one of the last group games. EG versus Tidehunters. EG pulls it out in the end. And this has been Blatant, casting in place of Feeder Noob, who couldn't be here to do the